Behind Hollywood's brightest smiles lay secrets that could destroy careers overnight. In an era when even a whisper could end everything, some of the most beloved leading men lived double lives, performing not just on screen, but every moment of every day. 10 icons walked this impossible line between fame and truth, between the roles they played and the selves they could never reveal. Some survived, some didn't, all paid the price. These are the stories Hollywood tried to bury. If you want to uncover more hidden truths, subscribe now, because some histories deserve to be remembered, no matter how deeply they were buried. Sal Mineo, the teen idol who dared to be himself. In the 1950s, Sal Mineo burst onto the screen like a comet, fast, brilliant, impossible to ignore. He wasn't just another pretty face. He was radiance itself, a teenage heartthrob who captured America's heart with his vulnerability and intensity. When he played Plato opposite James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, audiences sensed something real beneath the performance. There was a yearning in his eyes, a coded affection that spoke volumes to those who understood. For gay audiences in 1955, it was a moment of rare recognition in an era that demanded silence. At 16, Mineo had thousands of fan letters arriving weekly. But behind the magazine covers and flashing cameras, he was searching for a truth he couldn't speak publicly. Hollywood's golden age was built on a rigid image machine, one that celebrated pure, straight heroes and punished anyone who didn't fit the mold. Mineo tried to play along. He dated women, even got engaged. But quietly, he also pursued relationships with men, finding freedom in Hollywood's secret network of private parties and secluded houses in the hills. The tabloids maintained their silence. Studios wouldn't risk their golden boy's career for honesty. By the 1960s, Mineo was no longer the innocent teen idol. He moved into complex roles, earning 2 Oscar nominations by age 21. But whispers about his sexuality spread, and casting directors grew hesitant. In an industry more afraid of scandal than failure, doors began to quietly close. Mineo refused to fade away. He reinvented himself in gritty theater and independent productions, taking on roles that reflected his own struggles. Outsiders, rebels, men on society's margins. By the 1970s, he did what few contemporaries dared. He began to live openly. Then came the night of February 12th, 1976. Mineo was returning home from rehearsal when he was attacked and fatally stabbed in the alley behind his West Hollywood apartment. He was only 37. The tragedy shocked America, and tabloids cruelly blamed his sexuality. Today, Mineo's legacy transcends the headlines. He was one of the first major stars to live as himself, even if only quietly. His courage, subtle and dangerous, reverberates throughout Hollywood history like a heartbeat behind the glamour. Anthony Perkins, the man behind Norman Bates. What if the man who terrified audiences on screen was also terrified himself, not of a killer's knife, but of the pressure to hide his true self? Anthony Perkins, the unforgettable face behind Norman Bates in Psycho, lived at the intersection of fame and fear. Before that iconic role made his name immortal, Perkins was Hollywood's most beloved leading man, tall, handsome, brooding, with a mystique that drew people in, like moths to flame. In the 1950s, he wasn't just an actor. He was a rising obsession. He sang, he charmed, he embodied every emotional fantasy the magazines craved. But behind that perfect exterior was a man living 2 parallel lives, one for the camera, one in the shadows. Mid-century Hollywood was a bastion of image control. Studios dictated everything: who you dated, how you walked, what you said. Perkins, naturally shy and introverted, became a master of role-playing. In public, he flirted with women. In private, he developed deep romantic relationships with men, including a long relationship with actor Tab Hunter. But this wasn't an era where honesty paid off. Perkins's management and studio contracts explicitly warned that even the slightest hint of personal gossip could ruin his career overnight. Then came 1960 and Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece made Perkins a movie icon, but it also trapped him. As Norman Bates, he delivered a performance that was calm, sophisticated, and haunting. Ironically, playing a man hiding dark secrets behind a charming exterior mirrored Perkins's own life more than anyone knew. Off-screen, Perkins lived cautiously, often entering relationships discreetly and staying away from Los Angeles's gay community. Unlike Mineo, who eventually lived more openly, Perkins remained vigilant. The fear of exposure was ever present. He reportedly turned down roles if he suspected they might spark speculation about his sexuality. In the 1970s, Perkins surprised many by marrying photographer Barry Berenson. Their marriage lasted until his death, and they had 2 sons. Some describe their relationship as complicated but sincere, a mix of friendship, love, and unspoken understanding. Perkins never publicly acknowledged his sexuality during his lifetime, but those close to him painted a vivid picture of a man who walked the line between fear and truth. His relationships with men were sincere and meaningful, acknowledged in coded language, but never spoken aloud. Perkins's legacy is a paradox. He's remembered as both a gentle romantic and the man who redefined horror. But perhaps the most haunting part of his story isn't Norman Bates. It's how he was forced to split his soul just to survive. George Maharis, the TV star Undone, by one night. George Maharis seemed destined to be a household name. In the early 1960s, he had everything: looks, charisma, and on-screen presence that made directors take notice. With high cheekbones, a confident gaze, and rebellious energy, Maharis became the face of Route 66, a show that captured the restless spirit of post-war America. Each week, audiences followed him and co-star Martin Milner as they crisscrossed the country in a Corvette, chasing adventure and justice. Maharis didn't just act, he embodied the archetype of the handsome, mysterious guy with a complicated past. Women admired him, men wanted to be like him, and Hollywood saw in him the makings of a new kind of leading man. But behind his carefully crafted public persona was a truth that could cost him everything. Maharis had spent years perfecting his stagecraft before Route 66. He studied with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, appearing in serious Broadway plays that brought critical acclaim. When television called, he was ready. And when Route 66 premiered in 1960, George Maharis became an overnight sensation. Then, just as his career peaked, everything changed. In 1963, Maharis abruptly left Route 66, officially citing health reasons, hepatitis requiring extended leave. Fans were bewildered. Studio executives were disappointed. Rumors began to circulate. How could one of television's biggest stars disappear at the height of his fame? The answer came a year later, and it was explosive. In 1964, Maharis was arrested in a highly publicized incident involving another man. Though tabloids exaggerated every detail, the message was clear. In those days, such a scandal ended careers. Maharis maintained his dignity, but Hollywood was unforgiving. He didn't disappear easily. He moved into films, quick before it melts. Sylvia, The Happening with Anthony Quinn. He continued working in television with The Most Deadly Game. But his Route 66 momentum never fully recovered. For a star who was supposed to become one of Hollywood's defining leading men, the arrest marked an irreversible turning point. What makes Maharis's story remarkable isn't just his fall from grace, it's how he faced himself afterward. He never came out publicly, but lived on his own terms, quietly defiant. In the 1970s, he posed for Playgirl, a bold move that proved he was no longer afraid to be seen. His story is one of contrasts: the open road of Route 66 and the closed doors of Hollywood, the fearless man on screen versus the guarded one behind it. James Daly, The Quiet Doctor's Hidden Truth. Some Hollywood stories play out under blinding spotlights. Others unfold quietly between takes, behind perfectly composed smiles. James Daly's story belongs to the latter, a tale whispered between the lines of scripts, felt rather than announced. For most audiences in the 1960s and 70s, Daly was the epitome of steady, commanding presence. On television, he became a household name through his role as Dr. Paul Lochner in the long-running medical drama Medical Center, 1969-1976. Week after week, millions tuned in to watch Daly's calm authority, a doctor whose wisdom, steadiness, and compassion anchored the show. He wasn't the flashy leading man. He was the moral compass, the quiet strength in the room. But Daly's career stretched far beyond the hospital set. He had proven his dramatic depth in television anthologies like Studio One and Playhouse 90, and appeared in films such as The Young Stranger and Planet of the Apes, where he played Honorius the Inquisitor. He was the kind of actor directors trusted, reliable, skilled, adaptable, someone who could disappear into a role so fully that the audience forgot the man behind the character. And perhaps that was exactly how James Daly preferred it. In Hollywood's golden age and well into the 1970s, being a gay man in the industry meant walking a delicate line. Publicly, Daly lived a conventional life. He married actress Hope Newell in 1942, and they had 4 children, including future Emmy winner Tyne Daly. Privately, though, his life was more complex. According to Tyne, Daly was gay and lived closeted, navigating his truth with discretion in an era that left little room for openness. Unlike Mineo or Maharis, there were no scandals. Unlike Perkins, no typecast role to mirror his life. Daly's story unfolded quietly within the rhythm of steady work and a family life that doubled as both anchor and camouflage. He built his legacy on craft, not headlines, part of a generation of queer men who chose survival over spectacle. Colleagues remembered Daly for his kindness, intellect, and generosity toward younger actors. On set, he carried a quiet dignity that hid private struggles. Off set, his sexuality was known in trusted circles but never made public. He died in 1978, years before Hollywood began opening up about LGBTQ+ identity. What makes James Daly's story so striking is its subtlety. There were no public declarations, no dramatic reveals. Instead, there was a life lived between worlds, the world of his craft, where he shone, and the world of his truth, which he protected. Montgomery Clift, the beautiful rebel who hid his heart. In the pantheon of Golden Age icons, few stars embodied both brilliance and tragedy like Montgomery Clift. He wasn't just another leading man. He was a revelation. His quiet intensity and emotional depth redefined what Hollywood stardom could look like. Born in Omaha in 1920, Clift grew up between privilege and pressure. While others rose through charm or muscle, he built his reputation on pure craft. By his 20s, he was a Broadway sensation, delivering layered performances that caught Hollywood's eye. Unlike most stars, Clift refused long studio contracts, negotiating his roles individually, a bold move that gave him creative control. His debut in Red River, 1948, introduced audiences to his magnetic presence, and The Search, 1948, earned him an Oscar nomination. Soon after, A Place in the Sun, 1951, opposite Elizabeth Taylor, made him a Hollywood powerhouse. Taylor became one of his closest friends, one of the few who truly understood the struggles behind his enigmatic eyes. Because behind the artistry was a man forced to hide. Clift was gay in an era when exposure could end a career. Publicly, he was the romantic idol. Privately, he lived behind carefully constructed layers. His sexuality was an open secret among trusted friends, but the industry demanded silence. Biographers later described him as emotionally drawn to men, yet deeply conflicted, often engaging in brief, secretive relationships that left him both exhilarated and exhausted. His closest companions noted a pattern. He longed for intimacy, but feared the cost of being discovered. Then came the night that changed everything. In 1956, after a dinner at Taylor's home, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole. Taylor saved his life, but his face was shattered. Surgeons restored what they could, yet the transformation was undeniable. Hollywood's golden boy now carried visible scars and invisible ones that cut even deeper. Clift's post-accident career was darker and rawer. Performances in Suddenly Last Summer, 1959, and Judgment at Nuremberg, 1961, proved his talent remained, but addiction and emotional turmoil began to erode his once commanding presence. In a town obsessed with beauty, the industry struggled to embrace a star whose exterior no longer fit its myth. Clift's impact was profound. Before method acting became Hollywood's craze, he was already living it, channeling his own soul on screen. Brando and James Dean followed, but Clift had opened the door first. His life was a mirror split in two, brilliance and sensitivity on one side, pain and secrecy on the other. His refusal to conform made him a pioneer, yet the weight of hiding turned him into a casualty of his era. He died in 1966 at just 45, his heart giving out after years of physical and emotional strain. But his legacy endures in every performance that chooses truth over polish, vulnerability over pose. Roddy McDowall. The observer who survived in Hollywood's golden age, being gay wasn't just a personal secret, it was a career-defining gamble. Few understood that better than Roddy McDowall. While some actors hid behind studio-crafted romances and others risked it all in quiet defiance, Roddy learned to play the long game. He mastered Hollywood from within, not through scandal or rebellion, but through observation, precision, and quiet power. Long before he became a familiar face beneath layers of Planet of the Apes makeup, McDowall was already a Hollywood insider. Born in London in 1928, he arrived in the United States as a child refugee during World War II. Almost overnight, he became a star in How Green Was My Valley, 1941. The boy with the earnest eyes captivated audiences and critics alike. Unlike many child stars destined for tragedy, Roddy seemed to instinctively understand how Hollywood worked, and more importantly, how to survive it. As he grew older, McDowall didn't fight for the traditional leading man spotlight like Montgomery Clift or Rock Hudson. Instead, he carved out a niche that allowed him to thrive without exposing his private life to the public's brutal gaze. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, he worked steadily in film, stage, and television, shifting seamlessly between Shakespearean roles, historical dramas, and modern stories. He wasn't always the headliner, but he was everywhere, a trusted performer who adapted to every era Hollywood threw at him. And behind the cameras, he built something even more powerful, a network. Roddy was Hollywood's quiet observer, always present, rarely the center of gossip. He attended parties with Elizabeth Taylor, shared quiet dinners with Judy Garland, and photographed stars with an intimacy no paparazzi could match. His vast private photo archives would later become a treasure trove, revealing the industry's real faces away from staged glamour. In his personal life, McDowall lived as a gay man within carefully drawn boundaries. He never made public statements, never staged cover-up romances for publicity, and never became tabloid fodder. Friends and biographers describe him as cautious but confident, fully aware of Hollywood's dangers, but smart enough to navigate them. He created a life where his sexuality was understood in trusted circles, but shielded from the public eye. While contemporaries like Tab Hunter faced arrests and media exposés, Roddy avoided the spotlight's harshest glare by staying essential. His career never imploded. Instead, it evolved. By the 1960s, he reinvented himself as a respected character actor with roles like Cornelius in Planet of the Apes, 1968, cementing his status as a pop culture icon. Roddy McDowall's story stands out because it wasn't defined by tragedy or scandal. He represents another reality of queer life in Hollywood's golden age, survival through strategy. Troy Donahue, the golden boy living in whispers. In the sunlit world of late 1950s, Hollywood, few faces seemed more perfect than Troy Donahue. With golden hair, piercing blue eyes, and effortless charm, he wasn't just a star, he was a fantasy. Hollywood positioned him as the clean-cut alternative to James Dean's rebellion and Montgomery Clift's intensity. The boy next door, polished under California light. Born Merle Johnson Jr. in 1936, Troy's ascent began when Warner Brothers transformed him into their ultimate heartthrob. His breakout role in A Summer Place, 1959, made him an overnight sensation. As Johnny Hunter, the sensitive young lover in A Forbidden Romance, Donahue became the embodiment of pure romantic youth. Soon his face was on magazine covers and bedroom walls across America. But behind this carefully constructed image, whispers followed him. From his earliest fame, rumors about Troy's sexuality circulated quietly through Hollywood's backrooms. In an era when even a hint of queerness could end a career, his striking looks and close male friendships fueled speculation. Publicly, the studio ensured he was always seen with glamorous women, parading a string of starlets to reinforce his heartthrob status. Privately, things were far more complex. Friends and biographers later described him as a man who navigated same-sex attraction with caution, never denying but never revealing. Some called him bisexual. Others believed he was a gay man living within the strict confines of his time. Unlike Rock Hudson, whose double life was meticulously hidden, or Tab Hunter, whose arrest forced his sexuality into headlines, Troy's private world remained in rumor's shadow. His silence, whether strategic or necessary, became part of his myth. As the 1960s progressed, tastes shifted. Gritty realism replaced glossy ideals. The studio system that had built Troy began to crumble, and his wholesome persona quickly felt outdated. Roles vanished, and the carefully maintained illusion began to crack. Personal struggles with addiction and money followed. But even then, the rumors about his private life never fully faded. A brief role in The Godfather Part 2, 1974, reminded audiences of the golden boy he once was. But by then, Troy's story had become that of a man caught between public fantasy and private truth, between the roles he was given and the self he could never openly live. Troy Donahue's journey mirrors that of many queer men in Hollywood's golden age, adored for an image that left no space for their real selves. His sexuality existed in whispers, shaping his life and legacy even when unspoken. His story is a reminder that the cost of hiding isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible, but profound. Dirk Bogarde, the British star who changed cinema. By the late 1950s, Hollywood and British cinema were beginning to blur together, glamour meeting intellect, rebellion taking quiet forms. Standing at that intersection was Dirk Bogarde, a man whose beauty, restraint, and quiet brilliance made him both a star and an enigma. He wasn't loud, he wasn't scandalous, but his choices changed cinema forever. Born in London in 1921, Bogarde began as a contract actor for Rank Studios, quickly rising through war dramas and romantic films. With his sharp cheekbones, intelligent eyes, and clipped elegance, he became one of Britain's biggest stars. Films like The Blue Lamp, 1950, and Doctor in the House, 1954, made him a matinee idol, adored by millions. Yet behind the charming smile was a man who understood something crucial, that fame was only safe if his truth remained hidden. For much of the 1950s, Dirk lived a double life, the romantic hero in public and a deeply private man at home with his manager and lifelong partner, Anthony Forwood. Theirs was a love that existed quietly, almost invisibly, in an era that punished visibility. Friends knew, the industry knew, but no one said it out loud. It was an unspoken pact between a man and his world. Then in 1961, Bogarde made a decision that would forever redefine his career and queer cinema itself. He accepted the lead in Victim, the first English-language film to use the word homosexual. He played a successful lawyer being blackmailed for his relationship with another man. It was bold, controversial, and revolutionary. In doing so, Dirk risked everything: his fame, his image, his career. But he refused to step back. When Victim premiered, it caused outrage among censors and politicians, but admiration among those who recognized its quiet defiance. The film humanized gay men in a way that had never been seen before. Dirk's restrained, anguished performance gave dignity to a truth most were too afraid to name. He would later say the role was the wisest decision I ever made. After that, Bogarde's career shifted toward darker, more introspective work. In The Servant, 1963, he played a manipulative valet in a film laced with erotic tension. In The Night Porter, 1974, he explored desire and trauma in ways few actors dared. Each performance felt like another coded confession, not an announcement, but an act of understanding. Off-screen, he continued his life with Forward, retreating to the south of France in later years. They hosted artists, writers, and actors, living quietly but freely within their circle. Dirk never came out publicly, yet never denied who he was. He simply existed, gracefully, deliberately, without apology. His story is one of quiet rebellion. A man who used art to speak the truth that society forbade him to say aloud. Tab Hunter. The all-American boy with a secret tab hunter was the living embodiment of the American dream. With his blonde hair, strong jawline, and wholesome smile, he was the boy every mother wanted her daughter to marry. Hollywood packaged him as pure innocence, the safe, sanitized alternative to brooding rebels like James Dean. But beneath that squeaky clean image was a secret that could destroy everything. Born Arthur Gellion in 1931, Hunter was discovered by talent agent Henry Wilson, the same man who created Rock Hudson. Wilson specialized in turning handsome young men into marketable commodities, and Hunter was his perfect product. Warner Brothers signed him, and soon he was starring in hits like Battle Cry, 1955, and Damn Yankees, 1958. Teen magazines featured him constantly. Fan clubs multiplied. He was America's golden boy, the safe crush parents could approve of. Then came 1955. Hunter was arrested at a gay party in Long Beach, a raid that made headlines and nearly ended his career before it truly began. But Wilson was a master of damage control. He buried the story, paid off the right people, and manufactured romances with starlets like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds. The scandal was swept under the rug, but Hunter knew the truth. He was living on borrowed time. For years, he played the part perfectly. He smiled for cameras, escorted actresses to premieres, and gave interviews about wanting to settle down with the right girl. All while quietly navigating relationships with men in Hollywood's underground network, discreet parties, private homes, coded conversations. His relationship with actor Anthony Perkins was particularly intense, a love affair conducted entirely in shadows. They couldn't be seen together publicly, couldn't acknowledge what they meant to each other. The constant hiding took its toll on both men. By the 1960s, as the studio system collapsed, Hunter's career faded. The clean-cut teen idol image had become outdated, and without studio protection, he struggled to find work. He continued acting sporadically, but the golden years were over. It wasn't until 2005, when Hunter published his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, that he finally told the truth. He was 73 years old. For 50 years, he'd lived with the secret, protecting it because exposure would have meant losing everything. His story is a testament to the cost of conformity. Hunter spent his youth playing a role off-screen as carefully as any performance on it. And though he eventually found freedom and truth, decades of his life were spent hiding who he really was. Rock Hudson, the biggest secret in Hollywood. If there was one man who embodied the cost of Hollywood's closet, it was Rock Hudson. Tall, handsome, effortlessly masculine, he was everything America wanted a leading man to be. For decades he was the romantic ideal, starring opposite Doris Day in frothy comedies and winning hearts across the globe. But Rock Hudson's entire public life was a carefully constructed lie. Born Roy Scherer, Jr. in 1925, Hudson was discovered by Henry Wilson, the same agent who created Tab Hunter. Wilson saw potential in the awkward young man and transformed him completely. New name, new persona, new life. What Wilson couldn't change was Hudson's sexuality, so instead, he buried it. From the beginning, Hudson's career was built on deception. Studio-arranged dates with actresses, fake romances leaked to gossip columns, even a lavish wedding to Wilson's secretary, Phyllis Gates, in 1955. A marriage designed solely to deflect rumors. Gates later claimed she had no idea Hudson was gay, though many suspected the marriage was a business arrangement from the start. Meanwhile, Hudson lived a double life. By day, he was America's most eligible bachelor. By night, he attended private parties in the Hollywood Hills, part of a secret network of gay actors, directors, and industry insiders. His long-term relationship with Mark Christian remained hidden for years, conducted entirely behind closed doors. Hudson's closest friends, including Elizabeth Taylor and Doris Day, knew the truth, but protected him fiercely. In Hollywood's golden age, loyalty meant silence, and silence kept careers alive. For 30 years, the facade held. Hudson became one of the biggest stars in the world, earning millions and maintaining his status as a romantic icon. But the constant hiding took its toll. Friends described him as increasingly withdrawn, drinking heavily, struggling with the weight of living a lie. Then came 1985. Hudson collapsed in Paris and was rushed to the hospital. Within weeks, the truth emerged. He had AIDS. On July 25, 1985, Rock Hudson became the first major celebrity to publicly acknowledge having the disease. The revelation shattered his carefully maintained image and exposed the secret he'd protected his entire career. He died 3 months later, at age 59. Hudson's death changed everything. It humanized the AIDS crisis, forcing America to confront a disease they'd been content to ignore. It also sparked conversations about Hollywood's closet and the impossible choices gay actors faced. Rock Hudson lived his entire professional life as someone he wasn't. The cost of that deception was immeasurable, not just to him, but to countless others who saw in his perfect facade proof that they too could never be themselves. The golden age of Hollywood was filled with glamour and legend, but behind the glamour were real people living hidden truths. These actors were pioneers, quietly carrying their identities in a world that gave them no space to exist authentically. Some, like Dirk, used their art to speak what they couldn't say aloud. Others, like Rock Hudson, lived entire lives behind masks they could never remove. Some, like Sal Mineo, paid the ultimate price for daring to be themselves. Their courage, whether loud or whispered, defiant or simply surviving, shaped how we understand art, authenticity, and the cost of living in silence. They walked impossible lines, performed impossible roles, and somehow found ways to love, create, and endure. Which of these remarkable journeys touched you most? Their stories, whispered and hidden, yet unbreakably human, are what keep history alive. Share your thoughts below and subscribe, because these legends deserve to be remembered, celebrated, and never forgotten again.